I am Barbara Morrison. I am 68 years old, and I have learned that the blood in your veins matters far less than the ink on a ledger. I gave my family a $500 million aerospace empire, a life of unearned luxury, and a legacy written in the stars. In return, they handed me a one-way ticket to a state-run psychiatric ward. I bought them a mansion overlooking Puget Sound. They bought a corrupt doctor to erase my mind. They looked at me across the white linen tablecloths and saw a senile, helpless relic ready to be discarded. They underestimated the woman who wrote the guidance code for the very drones they were trying to smuggle. They didn't know I still had the access keys to the kingdom they thought they had already stolen. By the time the sun rises over the city tomorrow, they will be homeless, and I will be the one holding the deed to their prison cells. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The champagne in my glass cost more than my first car, but tonight it tasted like battery acid. We were seated at the best table in Aurora, the crowning jewel of the city's dining scene, suspended 50 stories above the glittering grid of Seattle's downtown. The air here was rarefied, scented with truffle oil and expensive perfume, designed to make you feel like a god looking down on the mortals below. To the acquisition, Victoria Hayes said, raising her flute. The crystal caught the ambient light, fracturing it into a spectrum of artificial rainbows. And to you, Barbara, the woman who made flight possible for the common man. My daughter-in-law had a smile that could sell sand to a nomad. It was polished, bright, and entirely devoid of warmth. She was wearing a bespoke ivory suit that I knew I had paid for directly or indirectly. Next to her, my son forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked brittle tonight, like fine china left too long in a kiln. His fingers drummed a nervous staccato rhythm on the stem of his glass. To skyward aerospace, Michael echoed, his voice a little too high, a little too breathless. We are so proud of you, Mum. Really, it's a good deal. Barbara, Victoria continued, leaning in, her elbows resting on the pristine tablecloth. Defense Corp is offering a premium. You can finally rest. You can travel. God knows you've earned it. No more 4 a.m. calls from the Pentagon, right? I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the hunger behind Victoria's eyes, a predatory glint that she usually masked with corporate jargon. I saw the terror in Michael's. They weren't celebrating my success. They were celebrating their payday. They were vultures circling a beast they assumed was already carrion. The paperwork is heavy, I said, playing the part they expected. I let my shoulders slump slightly, affecting the posture of a woman crushed by the weight of her own legacy. I must admit, the details they're becoming a bit much for me lately. The lawyers, the audits. Victoria exchanged a quick, sharp glance with Michael. It was a look of triumph mixed with anticipation. That's exactly why we're here, Mom, Michael said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. His skin was cold. We want to help you transition. You shouldn't be burdened by logistics anymore. Logistics, I muttered, staring into my wine. Yes, the shipping routes, the container manifests. It's all a blur. Speaking of manifests, Victoria said, her tone casual, too casual. With the transition to Defense Corp, what happens to the legacy shipping containers, the Class A secure units in the rail yard? Do they get audited immediately, or is there a grace period? It was a specific question, too specific for a woman whose business experience was limited to failed tech startups and spending my money. I'm not sure. Victoria, I stammered. Why do you ask? Just curiosity, she said, taking a sip of her drink. Hate to see good assets go to waste. My phone buzzed against my chest, a lifeline in the suffocating atmosphere. I pulled it out. The screen displayed the number of my private banker. I have to take this, I said, pushing my chair back. It's the wire confirmation for the escrow. Go ahead, Barbara, Victoria said, waving a hand magnanimously. We'll order dessert. I stood up, my knees creaking, a sound I emphasized for their benefit, and walked toward the entrance. I needed air. I needed to clear the scent of betrayal from my nostrils. I walked out of the dining room, past the host stand, and into the long marble-floored corridor that led to the restrooms and the elevators. The corridor was quiet, the muffled sounds of clinking silverware and low conversation fading behind me. I checked the phone. The transfer was confirmed. $500 million was currently sitting in a holding account waiting for my biometric signature. I was about to turn back when a shadow detached itself from the alcove near the service station. It was a young woman, a a server. I recognized her from earlier. She had poured our water with a shaking hand. Her name tag read Sophia Miss Morrison, she whispered. Her voice was trembling, her eyes wide and darting around as if she expected a sniper to take her out. I stopped, my CEO mask slipping back into place. Yes, what is it, dear? I don't have cash for a tip right now. It's not that. Sophia stammered. She took a step closer, invading my personal space. She smelled of nervous sweat and starch. I shouldn't be doing this. I could lose my job. But I saw her. Saw who? I asked, my voice dropping to match her volume. The intensity in her eyes was contagious. Your daughter-in-law, Sophia hissed, the woman in the ivory suit. When you stood up just now, when you turned your back to check your phone, my blood ran cold. What did she do? She opened her clutch, Sophia said, the words spilling out of her in a rush. She took out a small vial, brown glass, no label. She uncapped it and dumped a powder into your wine glass, the red one. I stared at her. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My Michael, my little boy who used to cry when his goldfish died. Are you sure? I grabbed her shoulder, perhaps too hard. A powder, positive? Sophia nodded vigorously. White powder. It dissolved instantly. She swirled the glass once, then put it back down. The man, the husband, he was watching the door. He was the lookout, ma'am. It wasn't poison. Poison was too messy, too final. If I died tonight, the deal would freeze. Probate would take years. They needed me alive, but incapacitated. They needed me pliable. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my money clip. I didn't count the bills. I just peeled off a thick stack of hundreds, easily $1,000. I pressed the money into Sophia's damp hand. Listen to me closely, I said, my voice steel. You didn't see anything. You are going to clock out right now. You are going to leave through the kitchen exit. Do not speak to anyone. Ma'am, I take this, I interrupted, handing her a plain white card with a single embossed number. If you are in danger, or if you need a job next week, call this number. Now go. Sophia looked at the money, then at the card, then at me. She nodded once, turned, and vanished into the service corridor. I stood alone in the hallway for 10 seconds. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The rage that flared in my chest was a physical thing, hot and jagged, but I forced it down. I encased it in ice. I was not a mother anymore. I was a strategist, and I was at war. I walked back into the dining room. The city lights outside were beautiful, indifferent to the treason happening at table 4. As I approached, I saw them. Victoria was leaning back, relaxed, triumphant. Michael was staring at my wineglass, his face pale. Everything all right, Mom? Michael asked as I reached the table. His voice was brittle. Just the bankers, I sighed, rubbing my temples. Always one more signature. I'm feeling a bit tired, actually. Maybe we should cut this short. Nonsense, Victoria said, sitting up. We haven't even toasted properly. Just one drink, Barbara. To the future. To the future, I murmured. I sat down. The glass of poisoned Cabernet sat in front of me. It looked identical to the one sitting in front of Michael. They were drinking the same vintage. Perfect. I needed a distraction, a physical chaos to mask a sleight of hand. I looked around. A busboy was clearing a table 2 spots away. Perfect. You know, I said, my voice taking on a confused, rambling tone. I was thinking about your father. He loved this view. Dad hated heights. Mom, Michael said softly, exchanging a look with Victoria. See, she's losing it. Did he? I blinked, feigning disorientation. I could have sworn. Anyway, I reached for the bread basket in the center of the table, allowing my hand to tremble violently. As my fingers grazed the basket, I jerked my arm, my elbow connecting solidly with the heavy silver water pitcher near Victoria. It went over with a crash. Ice water flooded the table, soaking the linen and splashing onto Victoria's expensive suit. Damn it. Victoria jumped up, knocking her chair back. Barbara, watch out. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I cried, half standing, grabbing napkins and throwing them uselessly onto the flood. I'm so clumsy. My hands. It's fine, Mom. Just sit down. Michael gasped, grabbing his napkin to save his phone from the water. The server, a new one, not Sophia, rushed over with towels. In the flurry of movement, with Victoria brushing water off her pants and Michael holding his phone, nobody was watching the wine glasses. My hands moved with the muscle memory of a woman who had spent her youth building circuit boards, precise, fast, invisible. I grabbed the stem of my tainted glass with my left hand and Michael's clean glass with my right. Under the pretense of moving them away from the spreading puddle, I crossed my arms and set them down on opposite sides. The move took less than a second. By the time Victoria looked up, glaring at me with barely concealed contempt, the glasses were switched. I really am sorry, Victoria, I stammered, sinking back into my chair. I don't know what's happening to me. It's okay, Barbara, Victoria said through gritted teeth, sitting back down on her wet chair. Accidents happen. Let's have that toast and get you home. Yes, I said, picking up the glass that had been in front of Michael, the clean glass. To family, Victoria said. To family, Michael whispered. He reached out and wrapped his fingers around the glass that had been sitting in front of me, the glass Victoria had poisoned. He lifted it to his lips. I watched, my heart hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. He tilted his head back and took a long, deep swallow. The drug was efficient. I had to give Dr. Phillips credit for that. It took 12 minutes. We had moved on to the appetizers. I picked at my tuna tartare, watching. It started with his eyes. They lost focus, drifting toward the ceiling lights. He blinked rapidly, shaking his head as if trying to clear a fog. Victoria, he mumbled. His speech was thick, the consonants slurring together. Is it hot in here? Victoria looked at him, annoyed. It's climate controlled, Michael. Eat your food. No, he said, louder this time. He dropped his fork. It clattered onto the china, a harsh sound in the quiet restaurant. I feel the lights. They're spinning. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Mom, I don't, Michael, I asked, leaning forward, channeling every ounce of motherly concern I could fake. Honey, what's wrong? He tried to stand up. I need to go. His legs gave way. He crumpled sideways, missing his chair and hitting the carpeted floor with a dull thud. Michael, Victoria shouted, but she didn't sound scared for him. She sounded angry. She jumped up and rounded the table, but she didn't check his pulse. She grabbed his arm, trying to haul him upright. Get up, she hissed low enough that she thought I couldn't hear. Not here. Get up, he's having a seizure, I yelled, standing up and knocking my chair over. Somebody help, call an ambulance. Michael was convulsing now, a subtle rhythmic twitching of his limbs. His eyes were rolled back, showing the whites. Foam was gathering at the corners of his mouth. He's fine, Victoria barked at the approaching manager. He has vertigo. He fainted. Help me get him to the car. The car, I shouted, playing the confused, terrified matriarch. Look at him, Victoria. He's dying. Call 911. No police, no ambulance, Victoria snapped, her panic rising. I have his doctor on speed dial. We're taking him there. She was trying to control the narrative. If he went to a hospital, there would be a record. If she took him to Phillips, he would just be sick. I already called. The voice cut through the dining room. We all turned. Sophia, the server I had sent away, was standing by the kitchen doors, phone in hand. She hadn't left. Brave girl. I called 911. Sophia shouted, pointing at Victoria. They're 5 minutes away. The operator said, do not move him. Victoria looked at Sophia with a murderous expression. If eyes could kill, the girl would have been ash. But the damage was done. The restaurant guests were standing, filming with their phones. The manager was kneeling by Michael. The sirens were already wailing in the distance, growing louder, singing the song of Victoria Hayes' destruction. The ambulance bay was a chaotic swirl of red and blue lights. I insisted on riding with him. Victoria tried to stop me, but the paramedics overruled her. She had to follow in her car, but she managed to squeeze into the back of the ambulance for a moment before they loaded him, claiming she needed to give them his medical history. He takes medication for anxiety. Victoria lied to the EMT, her eyes fixed on me. He mixes it with alcohol sometimes. He gets confused, disoriented. She turned to me, gripping my arm. Mom, you're in shock. You're not seeing this clearly. He just had too much wine. He was shaking. Victoria, I whispered, trembling, the foam. You're imagining things, Barbara, Victoria said, her voice dropping to that condescending, soothing tone one uses on a toddler. Your memory, we've talked about this. You get confused when you're stressed. Just let Dr. Phillips handle this. I've called him. He's meeting us at the ER. Phillips. I asked, who is Phillips? His specialist, Victoria said quickly. He knows his history. Don't talk to the ER doctors, Mom. You'll just confuse them with your episodes. Let me do the talking. She jumped out as the doors slammed shut. I sat next to my unconscious son. The paramedic was hooking him up to an EKG. His heart rate is erratic. The paramedic muttered to his partner. Pupils are pinpoint. This isn't alcohol. I looked at Michael. I felt a pang of grief, sharp and deep. I had saved my own life, but I had done it by letting my son fall on the sword Victoria intended for me. But then I remembered the look in his eyes at the table. He hadn't hesitated. The emergency room at Harborview Medical Center was a fortress of controlled chaos. They wheeled Michael into Trauma Bay 3. I stood by the curtain, wringing my hands, maintaining the facade. Victoria arrived 3 minutes later, breathless, her hair disheveled. A doctor stepped out. Dr. Chen. He looked young, tired, and incredibly sharp. Family, he asked. I'm his wife, Victoria said, stepping in front of me. It's an anxiety attack. He panicked. He needs rest. Ms. Hayes, Dr. Chen said, looking at his clipboard. Your husband is in a comatose state. His respiratory drive is suppressed. This is not a panic attack. He has a condition, Victoria insisted. Sweating now. We have a private physician, Dr. Phillips. He's on his way. He can explain everything. We don't consent to any invasive tests. Excuse me. Dr. Chen's eyebrows shot up. He is unconscious. Implied consent applies to life-saving diagnostics. No toxicology, Victoria nearly shouted. It's a privacy issue. Dr. Phillips will handle his blood work. This was it. She was terrified of what the blood would show. I stepped forward, letting tears spill onto my cheeks. I grabbed Dr. Chen's hand. Doctor, please, I wailed. Ignore her. She's in shock. That's my little boy. Test everything. Do whatever you have to do to save him. If he took something, go God. If he tried to hurt himself. Mom, shut up, Victoria hissed. Dr. Chen looked from the sweating, obstructionist wife to the weeping, terrified mother. It wasn't a hard choice. Nurse, Dr. Chen barked. Full toxicology screen stat. Get a CT of the head and call security to stand by. Ms. Hayes, if you interfere again, I will have you removed. Victoria turned the color of old ash. She backed away, pulling her phone out. I need to call his doctor. Victoria bolted for the exit, heading toward the quiet of the stairwell. I waited a beat. I feel faint, I told the nurse standing nearby. I need water. Sit here, Ms. Morrison, she said, pointing to a chair. As soon as she turned her back, I moved. I didn't go to the chair. I followed Victoria. I moved with the silence of a predator. Pressing myself against the wall outside the heavy fire door of the stairwell, I could hear her voice echoing off the concrete. A disaster. Total disaster. Phillips, Victoria was screaming in a whisper. He drank it. I don't know how. The old woman spilled water. There was a mix-up. Yes, he's out cold. A pause. Victoria listened to the voice on the other end. No, you listen to me, Victoria snapped. The hearing is at 8 a.m. That's in 5 hours. We can't cancel it. If we don't get the conservatorship today, the audit starts Monday. I can't survive an audit, Phillips. My breath caught in my throat. The audit, the shipping containers. Fix this, Victoria commanded. Get down here. Tell them he's unstable, and then come to the house. The old woman is here. She's acting confused. We can still spin this. If you testify that she's senile at 8 a.m., the judge signs the order, and I get control of the company. Then I can stop the audit. She hung up. I checked my watch. 2:30 a.m. The hearing was at 8 a.m. I had 5.5 hours to dismantle a conspiracy that had been months in the making. I needed evidence. The toxicology report would take hours, maybe too long. I needed the weapon. I slipped back into the trauma bay. The nurses were busy setting up the CT scan in the other room. Michael's belongings were piled on a chair in the corner. Victoria's expensive clutch was sitting on top of her coat. I checked the hallway. Clear. I opened the bag. My hands, usually steady, trembled slightly. Lipstick, phone, wallet, and there, tucked into a side pocket, a small brown glass vial, empty. I pulled it out. I sniffed it. A faint chemical, acrid smell, residue. This was it. This was the link. I wrapped it in a tissue and shoved it deep into my trouser pocket. I needed to get this to Margaret, my personal counsel. She was a shark in a 3-piece suit, and she would know how to weaponize this. I walked out of the ER, pulling my collar up against the chill. I headed for the parking garage where I had left my car after following the ambulance. The garage was dimly lit, the concrete stained with oil and old gum. My footsteps echoed. I reached my sedan and fumbled for my keys. That's when I heard the scrape of a boot on concrete behind me. I turned, but not fast enough. A fist slammed into my jaw, sending a starburst of white light across my vision. I staggered back, slamming into the door of my car. "Give it to me," a voice growled. A man in a dark hoodie stood there. He wasn't Michael. He was bigger, rougher. The fixer Victoria had likely called immediately after the restaurant. "I don't know what you're talking about," I spat, tasting blood. "The vile old woman. Hand it over." He lunged. "I might be 68, but I worked out every day." I sidestepped, driving my knee into his gut. He grunted, but he was strong. He grabbed my lapels and slammed me back against the car. My head bounced off the glass. I clawed at his face, desperate. He punched me again, in the ribs this time. The air left my lungs. I slid down the side of the car. He didn't want to kill me. That would look like murder. He just wanted the evidence. He patted down my jacket, his heavy hands rough. "Gotcha," he grunted. He ripped the tissue-wrapped vial from my pocket. "No," I wheezed, grabbing at his ankle. He kicked me away, hard. "Stay down, Grandma." He turned and sprinted toward a waiting black SUV. The engine roared, tires squealed, and he was gone. I lay on the cold concrete, gasping for air. My ribs burned. My face was swelling. I had lost the physical evidence. The smoking gun was gone. I pulled myself up, using the car door for support. I wiped the blood from my lip. I was hurt, yes, but I wasn't beaten. They had the vial, but they had just made a fatal mistake. They made it physical. They confirmed they were scared. 40 minutes later, I walked into the office of Margaret Chen. It was located in a nondescript building in the industrial district. A fortress of privacy. Margaret was waiting, a pot of black coffee on her desk. She looked at my face, the swelling, the split lip, and her expression hardened. "Victoria," she asked, "her hired help." I grunted, sinking into a leather chair. "They took the vial, Margaret. I had it and I lost it." Margaret didn't offer sympathy. She offered strategy. "The vial is gone. We can't prove the poisoning in time for the 8 a.m. hearing without the talk screen, which Victoria will try to bury or delay. We need a new angle." "The audit," I said, accepting a mug of coffee. I heard her on the phone. "She's terrified of the federal audit. She's using skyward shipping containers." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Smuggling, that's a federal crime. If we can prove she's moving illicit goods through your supply chain, the conservatorship is dead. A judge won't grant guardianship to a felon." "But where is the proof?" "The manifests are encrypted," I said. "Not on her personal backup," Margaret said. "Women like Victoria are arrogant. They keep insurance." "Does she have a home office?" "Michael's house," I said. "I have a key." The house on Madison Park was dark. Victoria was still at the hospital or plotting with Phillips. I parked a block away. My ribs screamed in protest as I jogged through the neighbor's yard, ducking under the trellis to reach the back door. I let myself in. The silence of the house was oppressive. It smelled of Michael's cologne, a scent that now made me nauseous. I went straight to Victoria's study. It was locked. I didn't have time for finesse. I kicked the door near the lock. It splintered open. I sat at her desk. Locked laptop, of course. But I knew Victoria. She didn't trust the cloud. She trusted hard copies. I opened the bottom drawer. False bottom. No. I checked the bookshelf. Behind a row of business biographies, I found it. A small, fireproof safe. The code. What would a narcissist use? Her birthday. Michael's. No. I tried the date of her first big sale. The one I had practically gifted her. 101,422. Click. Inside was a single black external hard drive labeled Project Skyward. I plugged it into my phone using an adapter Margaret had given me. I scanned the file headers. Email archive. V. Hayes, Dr. Phillips, Manifest, Shipment 404, Guidance Chips, Desk Beijing. Storage location, Warehouse B, Port of Seattle. "Got you," I whispered. I called Margaret from the car. "I have the drive, but there's something else. An email from tonight. It says inventory holding at Warehouse B until 0700 hours. That's 2 hours from now. If we can get a photo of the goods in your containers," Margaret said. We hand her to the FBI on a silver platter. "I'm going," I said. "I'll meet you there," Margaret replied. "Don't go in alone." Warehouse B was an old Skyward Aerospace subsidiary building that had been shuttered for years. It sat in the grim industrial park near the docks, surrounded by chain-link fences and fog. I arrived first. I killed the lights. The building looked abandoned, but there were fresh tire tracks in the mud. Margaret pulled up a moment later in her sleek black sedan. She handed me a flashlight. "Police are 10 minutes out." I called in an anonymous tip about a "We just need to verify the crates are there." We cut the lock on the side door and slipped inside. The warehouse was cavernous, filled with shadows. We swept our lights across the floor. Empty. Dust motes danced in the beams. There were no crates, no shipping containers, just a single chair in the center of the room with a laptop sitting on it. "It's a decoy," Margaret hissed. Suddenly, the laptop screen flared to life. A red countdown timer hit 0. A piercing high-decibel alarm shattered the silence. Strobe lights mounted in the rafters began to flash, blinding us. "It's a trap," I shouted over the noise. She knew we'd checked the files. Outside, tires screeched. Not police sirens. Heavy engines, private security, Victoria's mercenaries. "We have to go," Margaret yelled. We bolted for the door, but headlights swept across the exit. 2 SUVs were blocking our path. Men were getting out, holding batons and zip ties. They weren't here to arrest us. They were here to detain us until after the 8 a.m. hearing. If I missed the hearing, I lost by default. "Back way," I grabbed Margaret's arm. "I built this facility. There's a storm drain maintenance hatch in the basement." We sprinted through the strobe-lit nightmare, crashing through office partitions. I could hear boots pounding on the concrete behind us. My ribs were on fire, my breath coming in ragged gasps. We hit the basement stairs. I kicked the door shut and jammed a metal mop handle through the handle. "Here," I pointed to a rusted grate in the floor. Margaret, for all her refined legal prowess, didn't hesitate. She helped me heave the grate aside. We dropped into the damp, echoing tunnel just as the door above us splintered open. We ran through the sludge, emerging 3 blocks away in a drainage ditch near the highway. We were wet, filthy, and smelling of rot, but we were free. We sat in Margaret's car, shivering. I checked the time, 6 a.m. "We have nothing," I said, wiping grime from my face. The warehouse was empty. "The vial is gone. We look like fugitives." "Think, Barbara," Margaret said, revving the engine to get the heat blasting. Why was the warehouse empty? Because the goods were never there, I realized, the pieces clicking together. The email said, until 0700, but the ship leaves at 6:30. They loaded the containers directly onto the vessel last night. They're gone. They're in international waters. "So we can't prove the smuggling," Margaret said, slamming the steering wheel. "No," I said, a cold calm settling over me. "We can't prove the goods, but we can follow the money." The hard drive eyes saw something else, a folder called consulting fees. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the copied files. "Here, Dr. Phillips, monthly payments of $50,000 to an offshore account in the Caymans. The account is linked to a shell company. Hayes Logistics." Margaret smiled. It was a terrifying sight. "Bribery. We have the money trail. We don't need the drugs or the chips. We just need to prove she paid the doctor who is about to testify against you." 6:30 a.m. My phone rang. It was Victoria. "What?" Margaret whispered. "Put her on speaker. Play the victim," I answered, making my voice tremble. "Hello, Victoria. I'm Mom." Victoria's voice was dripping with fake panic. "Where are you?" "The hospital called. They said you ran away. We've been looking everywhere." I was scared. "Victoria," I stammered. "The man in the garage. He hit me. I'm bleeding." "What man?" Victoria feigned ignorance perfectly. "Mom, you're confused. There was no man. You fell. Listen to me. Dr. Phillips is with me. We're at your house. We need to check your vitals. You might have a concussion." "My health?" I asked. "But I'm at the park." "Stay there," Victoria commanded. "No, wait. Go home. Go to the house. We'll meet you there. We just want to help you, Barbara. You're not well. The dementia's getting worse fast." She was setting the stage. She wanted me at the house so Phillips could examine me and declare me incompetent right before the hearing. "Okay," I whimpered. "Okay, Victoria, I'll go home. Please don't let them hurt me. Nobody is going to hurt you. Mom, just go home." I hung up. "She thinks I'm going to the house," I told Margaret. "Let her wait," Margaret said, putting the car in gear. "We're going to the courthouse. We need to clean you up. You can't walk in looking like a sewer rat. We need a suit." "I have a spare at the office," I said. "Let's go." 7:55 a.m. The hallway of the county courthouse smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. I stood outside the double doors of courtroom 3B. I was wearing a fresh navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk scarf. The bruise on my jaw was covered with concealer, but the swelling made me look tough, resilient. But Margaret stood beside me, holding a briefcase that contained the hard drive and the printed bank statements, through the small window. I could see them. Victoria was pacing, checking her watch. She looked confident, arrogant. Dr. Phillips was sitting on the bench, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked like a man waiting for the guillotine. "They're wondering where you are," Margaret whispered. "They think you're a no-show. They think the default judgment is in the bag." "Let's disappoint them," I said. The bailiff's voice boomed. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Anderson presiding." We waited. "Petitioner, Ms. Victoria Hayes," the judge said. "Is the respondent, Ms. Barbara Morrison, present?" Victoria's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, regrettably, Ms. Morrison is missing. She fled the hospital last night in a state of psychosis. We fear for her safety." Margaret pushed the doors open. We walked in. The sound of our heels on the hardwood floor was like a drumbeat. "Reports of my psychosis," I announced. My voice, projecting to the back of the room, had been greatly exaggerated. The silence was absolute. Victoria spun around. Her face went slack. Her jaw literally dropped. She looked from me to the empty hallway behind me, as if expecting the ghosts she had sent to haunt me. Dr. Phillips made a small squeaking sound and shrank into his suit. "I apologize for the interruption, Your Honor," Margaret said smoothly, walking to the defense table. "My client was detained by unforeseen circumstances, but she is here and she is ready." The hearing was short, brutal, and efficient. Victoria's lawyer tried to pivot. "Your Honor, the fact that Ms. Morrison is here is a relief, but her behavior last night, attacking her son, fleeing medical care, still warrants an emergency evaluation." "We agree," Margaret said, standing up. "An evaluation of the facts is exactly what we need. We would like to cross-examine Dr. Phillips." Phillips took the stand. He looked like he was going to vomit. "Dr. Phillips," Margaret began, pacing like a tiger, "you claim Ms. Morrison has rapid-onset dementia." "Yes," Phillips whispered, "classic symptoms." "And you base this on observations, her confusion, her paranoia," Margaret mused. "Is it paranoia if people are actually conspiring against you?" "Objection," Victoria's lawyer shouted. "Withdrawn," Margaret smiled. She pulled a document from her briefcase. "Dr. Phillips, are you familiar with an account at the Cayman Islands National Bank ending in 4490? Phillips froze. He didn't answer. "Let the record show." The witness is sweating profusely, Margaret said dryly. "This account has received 6 deposits of $50,000 in the last 3 months. The source, Hayes Logistics." Margaret slammed the paper down on the witness stand. "Did you or did you not accept $300,000 from Ms. Victoria Hayes to falsify a medical diagnosis for Ms. Morrison?" Phillips looked at Victoria. Victoria was staring at the table, her hands clenched into fists. "She has gambling debts," Margaret shouted, dropping the polite lawyer act. "She owes money to loan sharks. Victoria Hayes bought him. Isn't that true, Dr. Yep?" Phillips shrieked, breaking completely. "Yes. She said she'd pay off the bookies. She gave me the powder. I didn't want to do it. She forced me." Chaos erupted. The judge was banging his gavel. Victoria jumped up. "He's lying. The old woman is crazy. She paid the doctor to frame me." "Sit down, Ms. Hayes," the judge roared. "I won't sit down," Victoria yelled, her mask of sanity slipping. "This is my company. I earned it. She's just a senile old bat sitting on a fortune." I stood up. I didn't yell. I spoke quietly, but in the sudden silence it carried. "It's not about the fortune, Victoria," I said. "It's about the drones." Victoria went still. "I found the hard drive," I said. "Project Skyward. You've been stripping guidance chips from our decommissioned inventory and shipping them to foreign buyers in Beijing using my containers. That's not just fraud, Victoria. That's treason." Victoria's face turned a sickly shade of green. "And since we couldn't catch the shipment," I continued, looking toward the back of the courtroom, "I called some friends who were very interested in export violations." The doors opened again. Special Agent Rodriguez of the FBI walked in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. "Victoria Hayes," Rodriguez said, her voice bored but authoritative, "you are under arrest for violation of the Arms Export Control Act, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." Victoria looked at the window, thinking about running. Then she looked at the agents. She slumped. The fight went out of her like air from a punctured tire. "It was Michael," she whispered as they handcuffed her. "He knew. He helped me. I didn't stay to watch them haul her away. I had one more stop." I returned to the hospital. The police guard at Michael's door let me in. He had seen the news. Tech mogul's daughter-in-law arrested in stunning courtroom raid. Michael was awake. He was watching the TV mounted on the wall. He looked at me. His eyes were red, puffy. "Mom," he croaked. "Oh God, Mom, Is it true? Did she really stop? I said. I stood at the foot of his bed. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a cold, heavy exhaustion. Don't lie to me, Michael. Not now. Not ever again. I didn't know about the smuggling, he cried. I swear. Maybe not, I said. But you knew about the poison. You held the glass. You looked me in the eye and toasted to family while you tried to dissolve my mind. She didn't make you do anything. I cut him off. You chose the luxury cars and the vacations and the easy money over your own mother. You bet against me, Michael. And you lost. I'm going to jail, he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. I'll lose everything. You won't go to jail, I said. He looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. You'll help me. My lawyers will argue coercion, I said. We'll paint you as a manipulated victim. You'll do probation, rehab. Oh, thank you, Mom, he wept. Thank you. But, I said, the word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. The money is gone. Michael, I've placed all assets into a revocable trust. You are disinherited, effective immediately. No allowance, no house, no car, no trust fund. His face went white. But how will I live? You'll work, I said. I've arranged a job for you. A job where? At corporate. I smiled. It was a cold smile. Skyward Aerospace has a very large campus. It requires a lot of maintenance. The janitorial staff is always hiring. You start Monday. Minimum wage, no benefits. You can't be serious, he whispered. I'm your son. Exactly, I said, turning to leave. And it's time you learned the value of an honest day's work. 6 months later, I sat in my office at Skyward Aerospace. The view was the same, the city skyline, the distant Puget Sound, but the air was cleaner now. Sophia walked in. She was wearing a sharp gray suit, her hair neatly styled. She placed a tablet on my desk. Weekly reports, ma'am, she said. And your coffee. Thank you, Sophia, I said. How is he doing? Sophia didn't need to ask who. She tapped the screen. A live feed from the security cameras in the lower lobby came up. Michael was there. He was wearing a gray jumpsuit with the Skyward logo on the back. He was pushing a heavy industrial mop bucket. He looked tired. His hair was unkempt, and he wore no expression. He stopped to wring out the mop, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his sleeve. He didn't look happy, but for the first time in his life, he looked real. His supervisor says he's late sometimes, Sophia said, but he does the work. He hasn't quit. Good, I said, closing the file. Maybe there's hope for him yet. I stood up and walked to the window. I had my company, I had my mind, and I had the satisfaction of knowing that justice wasn't just a concept, it was a hammer, and I was the one who swung it. Ready for the board meeting, Ms. Morrison? Sophia asked. I straightened my scarf. Yes, Sophia, let's go build something. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below. Even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say, you were here.